St. Andrews, Scotland, a beautiful ancient city by the North Sea. Home to St. Andrews University, amazing ruins and cathedrals, and the stretch of sand where Chariots of Fire was filmed. But if you ask what most people think of when they think of St. Andrews, they'll say one thing: golf. The Old Course at St. Andrews. Often considered the home of golf, it's a place that challenges amateurs and professionals alike, and beckons thousands of golf tourists each year to make the pilgrimage. This is a place steeped in history, harkening back all the way to the 1400s. The game of golf had grown in popularity during the early 15th century, but in 1457, James II of Scotland banned the game, concerned that young men were too busy playing golf to concentrate on their archery studies. It wasn't until 1502 that the ban was lifted, when King James IV became a golfer. In fact, there's some historical evidence that King James not only made a trip to St. Andrews to play golf, but also bought balls and clubs while he was there. Try beating 500 years for golf tourism. There's been a number of events that took place on the St. Andrews links that would shape the way we play modern golf. For example, in 1754, 22 gentlemen golfers, as they were called, founded the Society of St. Andrews Golfers. This group later became the Royal and Ancient, the governing body for golf everywhere except for the United States and Mexico. Of course, if you traveled back in time to play around with one of these founding members, you might be surprised to find that the course was 22 holes instead of 18, 11 out and 11 back, which meant you'd play the same hole going out and back in, with the exception of holes 11 and 22. Eventually, the St. Andrews golfers agreed that the first 4 holes, and thus the last 4 holes, were too short, so they combined them to create the 18 holes that are still played today. Things continued peacefully in St. Andrews until 1797, when the links went bankrupt. The town council sold the land rights, and after changing hands a few times, it was taken over by rabbit farmers. Rabbits, doing what rabbits do, soon overwhelmed the land and the golfers. The ensuing legal and occasionally physical battle lasted 20 years, until a well-off landowner named James Cheap bought the course. James was a golfer himself and was happy to turn the land usage over to the Royal and Ancient Golf Club, saving the links for a future of golfing. The Cheap family legacy can still be found around the course. In fact, the survey commissioned by James of the course's boundaries in each hole has become the oldest known plan in existence. The locals will tell you that one of the most amazing things about the St. Andrews Old Course is how little it's changed over the years. Even so, there's been a fair bit of evolution. The most notable design changes were made by Daw Anderson and Old Tom Morris, the designer for the famous 1st and 18th holes. Remember those out and back holes we talked about earlier? Well, by the middle of the 19th century, golf was becoming so popular that groups started meeting each other on the same hole, but going in different directions. You can imagine the disputes this must have caused. So in 1856, Allen Robertson, the greenkeeper at the time, started cutting a second hole on each green. White flags indicated an outward hole and red flags indicated the inward. Then in 1870, Old Tom Morris created the new first green, so that the 17th no longer doubled as the first. The way the town itself has changed over the years has also affected the golf course. The first hole was originally just yards away from the beach, the ultimate sand trap. So in the mid-1800s, Sir Hugh Lyon Playfair, another influential shaper of the old course, tried stabilizing the sand dunes that were to the right of the first hole. Unfortunately, his efforts were destroyed by strong tides. Then in 1893, a townsman took it upon himself to create a breakwater from 4 old fishing boats and some stones. His makeshift seawall withstood the winter tide, and the land behind it filled in, creating more of a buffer for the first hole. These days, it's been replaced by a modern seawall, of course, protecting the historic course and its buildings from the turbulent North Sea. St. Andrews has a host of other quirky features that harken back to the past as well. If you've ever watched a game here, you've probably noticed the little road that cuts across the 1st and 18th holes. It's called Granny Clark's Wynd. In many of Scotland's old towns, you can still find the occasional archaic street name, and in this case, a wynd refers to a narrow alley that leads off of a major road. But who is Granny Clark? Historian David Joy has said that the Clarks had a cottage on the communal drying green, an area next to the lifeboat house where the townspeople dried their laundry. And from about 1830 to the 1860s, Granny Clark supervised the activity around the site, providing endless cups of tea, sandwiches, and so on. The lifeboat house has long since vanished, but the road is still there and still in play. If your ball happens to land on the asphalt, you still have to play it where it lies or take a penalty. Most would agree that one of the most frustrating features of St. Andrew's Old Course is its vicious bunkers. The most famous being the Road Hole bunker on the 17th. A relatively small bunker, but with massively steep sides, it has tripped up many amateurs and professionals alike. Its most recent alterations before the 2005 Open angled the land around it, funneling even more unsuspecting balls into its grips. But with the exception of the road hole, the actual layout of the bunkers has been largely unchanged since 1904. The year 13 were added to the course. There is the curious story of the disappearing and then reappearing bunker on the 14th hole. In 1869, the bunker was filled in, but one golfer thought it was of particular value and adamantly petitioned the Royal and Ancient to put it back. His requests were ignored, and one night a local gardener, bribed with gold, took his shovel and redug it. It remains there today. In modern times, you'll get a little break from the bunkers on the 1st and the 18th hole, but that wasn't the case before 1842. Back then, there was a bunker on the 18th, about halfway between the Wilkin Bridge and Granny Clark's Wynd. It was named Halkett's Bunker, possibly after John Halkett, who was the Society of St. Andrew's golfers' first chaplain and winner of the 1773 and 4 Silver Cup. Sir Hugh Lyon Playfair, one of the other influential shapers of the Old Course, had it filled in 1842, but its impression remains. Also on the 18th, you'll find the aforementioned most photographed bridge in golf. The Wilkin Bridge is a small, stone footbridge that spans the Wilkin Burn. Historians aren't sure of its exact age, but estimates put it between 700 to 800 years old. Originally a path for shepherds and livestock, for a number of years the residents of St. Andrews used the bridge as a clothesline for drying wet laundry, supervised no doubt by Granny Clark. And over the years, many of golf's historic players have crossed the bridge, each with their own flair. Tom Watson gave it a kiss, Jack Nicholson waved to his fans, Arnold Palmer raised his hat, and Sam Snead did a little dance. You can take your picture there too, on a Sunday when the Old Course is closed for golf and the public is welcome to wander around as they might any old regular park, a rule that's been in place since the 16th century. In 2021, the Open Championships will be played at the St. Andrew's Old Course, the 150th playing of golf's oldest event. Rather fitting for this most historic home of golf.